May 23rd, 1934. Bonnie Parker was alone. Room 7 at the Red Crown Tavern, just outside Platte City, Missouri. She'd sent Clyde away 3 hours earlier, told him to scout their next route, find them a safe house in Kansas. He didn't want to leave her, but Bonnie insisted. She needed rest, she said. Her leg, burned in that car crash 2 months prior, was infected again. The pain was unbearable, but that wasn't the real reason she sent him away. Bonnie knew the police were coming. She'd seen the same black Chevrolet circling the motel twice that afternoon. Saw the way the desk clerk kept glancing at their room. Heard the phone call he made when he thought nobody was listening. She could have run. Could have grabbed their things and disappeared into the Missouri countryside like they'd done 100 times before. But Bonnie Parker was tired. Tired of running. Tired of sleeping in stolen cars. Tired of watching Clyde kill to keep them free. She was 23 years old and felt 60, so she made a choice. She would face them alone, give Clyde a chance to escape, let him live without her for once. What Bonnie didn't know was that Sheriff Howard McGinnis had brought 14 men. Not to arrest her, to kill her. Because in 1934, Bonnie and Clyde weren't just criminals. They were symbols. Symbols of everything the authorities couldn't control during the Depression. Poor folks loved them, wrote songs about them, hid them from the law. And that made them more dangerous than any gang in America. McGinnis didn't want a trial, he wanted a body, preferably 2. But he'd settle for 1. 6:47 p.m. The sun was setting over the cornfields. Bonnie sat on the edge of the bed, smoking a cigarette, her burned leg propped on a pillow. She'd written 3 letters that afternoon, 1 to her mother in Dallas, 1 to her sister, and 1 to Clyde. She sealed them, left them on the nightstand, and waited. The sound came at 7:03 p.m., car doors slamming, boots on gravel. Men's voices, low and urgent. Bonnie stood, limped to the window, pulled back the curtain just enough to see. 14 silhouettes spreading out around the motel. Rifles, shotguns, 1 man with a Thompson submachine gun. McGinnis stood in the center, pointing, giving orders. She recognized him from the wanted posters. He'd been chasing them for 8 months, ever since they'd shot his deputy during a roadblock in Arkansas. That deputy survived, but McGinnis never forgot, never forgave. Bonnie let the curtain fall. She looked around the room. 1 bed, unmade. A sink with a cracked mirror. Their belongings scattered everywhere. Clyde's spare shirt, her lipstick, a half-empty bottle of whiskey, and under the mattress, 2 loaded pistols. She could fight. Part of her wanted to. Go down shooting like the newspapers always said she would. But another part, the part that still remembered being a waitress in Dallas, serving coffee, and dreaming of being a poet, that part wanted something different. She wanted to choose her own ending. 7:15 p.m. McGinnis's voice crackled through a megaphone. Bonnie Parker. We know you're in there. Come out with your hands up. She didn't move, didn't answer. You got 60 seconds. Then we're coming in. Bonnie sat back down on the bed, took another drag of her cigarette. 60 seconds. She thought about Clyde, wondered if he was far enough away yet, wondered if he'd forgive her for this. Probably not. Clyde would never forgive her for surrendering. He'd rather die together than live apart. But Bonnie had realized something in these last few months. Their love story wasn't romantic. It was a death pact. And she was done dying. 30 seconds, Bonnie! McGinnis's voice again, harder now, angrier. She stubbed out her cigarette, stood up, smoothed her dress. Checked her reflection in the cracked mirror, hollow cheeks, tired eyes, hair that needed washing. This wasn't how she imagined she'd look at 23. This wasn't how she imagined any of it. 10 seconds. Bonnie walked to the door, put her hand on the knob. Outside she could hear safeties clicking off, 14 men ready to shoot. She took a breath, opened the door, stepped into the fading light. And what happened next would shock everyone who thought they knew Bonnie Parker's story. Bonnie stood in the doorway, hands raised, silhouetted against the dim light of the motel room. 14 rifles pointed at her chest. Nobody moved. McGinnis stared at her, megaphone still in his hand, mouth slightly open. He'd expected gunfire. Expected her to come out shooting, giving him justification to turn that room into Swiss cheese. Instead, here she was, surrendering. It didn't make sense. "Where's Clyde?" McGinnis finally shouted. "Gone." Bonnie's voice was calm, almost bored. "When's he coming back?" "He's not." McGinnis lowered the megaphone, walked closer, gun still trained on her. His deputies shifted nervously. This felt like a trap. Bonnie Parker didn't surrender. She died with her boots on, guns blazing. That's what the newspapers said. That's what the legend promised. "You're lying." Bonnie shrugged. "Believe what you want." She took a step forward. 3 deputies rushed her, grabbed her arms, threw her against the wall of the motel. Hands patted her down roughly, searching for weapons. They found nothing. Not even a knife. McGinnis entered the room, eyes scanning for Clyde, for an ambush. His men followed, tense, ready. They tore apart the bed, checked the closet, looked under the furniture. Bonnie watched from outside, wrists now in handcuffs, 2 deputies gripping her shoulders. McGinnis emerged 5 minutes later, holding the 2 pistols from under the mattress and the 3 sealed letters from the nightstand. He ripped open the one addressed to Clyde, read it silently. His face changed. The anger faded. Something else replaced it. Confusion, maybe, or disappointment. "What's it say, boss?" one deputy asked. McGinnis didn't answer. Just folded the letter, put it in his pocket. He walked up to Bonnie. "You know what happens now. Trial, prison, maybe execution." Bonnie met his eyes. "I know. Then why? Why surrender?" For the first time, Bonnie's composure cracked. Her voice dropped to almost a whisper. "Because I'm tired of being what everyone needs me to be." McGinnis studied her face, saw the exhaustion, the infection spreading up her leg. The weight of 2 years running. He'd been chasing a legend, but standing in front of him was just a sick, tired girl who looked 50 years older than she was. "Take her to the car," he ordered. As they led her away, Bonnie looked back at the motel room one last time. At the unmade bed. At the life she was leaving behind. She didn't cry. The news spread fast. By midnight, every newspaper in America knew Bonnie Parker captured. Clyde Barrow still at large. The headlines screamed betrayal. Some called her a coward. Others said Clyde had abandoned her. Nobody understood the truth, that she'd chosen this, that she'd saved him. The jail in Platte City wasn't built for someone like Bonnie. They put her in a cell meant for drunks and drifters. Concrete floor, metal cot, bucket in the corner. Her leg throbbed. The infection was spreading. She asked for a doctor. They ignored her. 3 days passed. No trial, no lawyer, just interrogations. McGinnis came every morning with the same questions. Where's Clyde? Where are the others? Where's the money from the banks? Bonnie said nothing. Just stared at the wall and smoked the cigarettes they gave her. On the 4th day, something changed. McGinnis entered her cell alone. No deputies, no notepad. He sat on the floor across from her. "That letter you wrote to Clyde." Bonnie looked at him. "What about it? You told him not to come for you, told him to disappear, start over." She nodded. "You really think he'll listen?" Bonnie smiled sadly. "No. He won't. Then why write it?" "Because I had to try." McGinnis was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled out a newspaper. Showed her the headline. "Clyde Barrow vanishes. Police lose trail in Oklahoma." She read it again. Her hands trembled slightly. He actually left. "Looks like it," McGinnis said. Bonnie closed her eyes. She'd expected Clyde to come storming in. Expected a shootout. Expected to die together, like they'd always planned. But he'd listened. He'd actually listened. She didn't know whether to feel relieved or heartbroken. "You love him?" McGinnis asked. "More than anything. Then why'd you do it?" Bonnie opened her eyes, looked at the sheriff with complete clarity. "Because loving someone doesn't mean dying with them. Sometimes it means living without them." The trial lasted 6 days. June 1934. The courthouse in Platte City overflowed with spectators. Farmers, shopkeepers, reporters from New York and Chicago. They came to see the legend. Bonnie Parker, the gun-toting woman who'd robbed banks and killed lawmen alongside Clyde Barrow. But the woman who sat in that courtroom wasn't what they expected. No defiance, no Hollywood glamour. Just a frail girl with a bandaged leg, dark circles under her eyes, who answered every question with yes, sir, or no, sir. The prosecution brought witness after witness. Gas station attendants they'd robbed, police officers they'd shot at, families of the men who died. Bonnie listened to all of it, never interrupted, never defended herself. Her court-appointed lawyer begged her to fight, to claim she was forced, that Clyde controlled her, manipulated her, but Bonnie refused. I made my choices, she told him. I'll face the consequences. The jury deliberated for 90 minutes. Guilty on all counts. The judge gave her 30 years. Could have been execution. Probably should have been. But something about Bonnie's surrender, her complete acceptance of responsibility, had shifted the room. Even the prosecution seemed uncomfortable, asking for death. McGinnis sat in the back row during sentencing. Watched Bonnie stand, face the judge, show no emotion when he pronounced 3 decades in prison. She was 23. She'd be 53 when she got out, if she survived that long. They transferred her to the Missouri State Penitentiary for Women in Jefferson City, a fortress of gray stone and barbed wire. Cell Block D prisoner number 47821. The other inmates expected the Bonnie Parker from the newspapers. Expected her to be tough, violent, running things within a week. Instead, they got a quiet girl who kept to herself, who worked in the laundry, who wrote poetry in a notebook she bought from the commissary, who never talked about Clyde. Months passed, then a year. No word from Clyde Barrow, no rescue attempt, no letters. It was like he'd disappeared from the earth. Some inmates whispered that he was dead. Others said he'd started over with a new girl. Bonnie said nothing, just wrote her poems and waited for her leg to heal. It never fully did. Spring 1936, 2 years into her sentence. Bonnie was working in the garden, a new program the warden started for good behavior, planting tomatoes in the Missouri sun. A guard approached. "Parker, you got a visitor." Bonnie's heart stopped. She hadn't had a visitor in 2 years. Her mother had come once, cried the entire time, and never returned. Too painful. She followed the guard to the visiting room, sat down at the metal table, waited. The door opened, and there he was, but it wasn't Clyde, it was McGinnis, the sheriff who'd arrested her. He looked older, grayer. He sat down across from her. Didn't speak for a moment. "How's the leg?" he finally asked. "Better." "Good." Silence. McGinnis pulled an envelope from his jacket, placed it on the table between them. "This came to my office last week, addressed to me. But it's for you." Bonnie stared at the envelope, recognized the handwriting immediately. Clyde, her hands shook as she opened it. Inside was a single page. No date, no return address. Just words, Bonnie. "I tried to hate you for leaving, tried to forget you, tried to be what you wanted me to be. I'm in California now, working on a ranch, new name, new life. Nobody knows who I am. I wake up every morning and don't run. It feels wrong, but it also feels like breathing. You saved my life. I understand that now. I'll never stop loving you, but I'll also never come back, because you were right. Sometimes loving someone means letting them go. Live your life, Bonnie. Write your poems. Find your peace. I found mine because of you. Goodbye." The letter ended there. No signature. Bonnie read it 3 times, tears streaming down her face. The first time she'd cried since her arrest. McGinnis watched quietly. When she finally looked up, he spoke. "He's really out." She nodded. "Can't say for certain. But yeah, I think he is." McGinnis stood to leave, paused at the door. "What you did, turning yourself in, saving him. That took more courage than anything I've ever seen." Bonnie wiped her eyes. Didn't feel like courage, felt like giving up. McGinnis shook his head. "Courage isn't dying for something, it's living for it." He left. Bonnie sat alone in that visiting room, holding Clyde's letter. And for the first time in years, she felt something she'd forgotten existed. Hope. She served 18 years, got out in 1952 for good behavior, moved back to Dallas, became a librarian, never married, never spoke publicly about Clyde. Published one book of poetry under a different name. It sold poorly. She didn't care. Bonnie Parker died in 1974 at age 63. Peaceful, in her sleep, surrounded by books and quiet. Clyde Barrow was never found. Some say he died in California. Others say he lived to 90. But what matters is this. 2 people who were supposed to die together in a hail of bullets instead chose life. Chose separation. Chose the harder path. May 23rd, 1934. Bonnie Parker stood alone in a motel doorway and changed everything. Not with a gun, with a choice.